Welcome back, Star Wars fans, to Coruscant Radio Underground. I'm Andrew, and I'm here with Marisha.
It's true.
And we're all like completely, we're all dying from allergy issues. So
Yeah.
we're going to try to keep the
But
energy
no
up.
one has strep throat, which is good because the kids had strep throat earlier in the week, and I was convinced that we were all going to get it because I'm a pessimist. Andrew and I are a real fun combination. When somebody gets sick, we generally decide that we're all going to die, but we haven't yet, so that's something.
It's always a good thing when nobody dies from
Yes,
strep throat.
especially not all of us. It would really be a shame if we all died from strep throat.
Yeah.
It'd be very inconvenient for the people who had to deal with all of our stuff.
Right. So we're going to talk about the season premiere of The Mandalorian. Just first thoughts.
First thoughts. I really enjoyed it.
Yep.
I could see if there were people who didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett, they could have gotten to it and said, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
So I kind of, if I had been the Star Wars gods, I would have saved that bit of to do for this show. But
I mean, I get it, but then you were going to spend 2 episodes of this short season doing that, and
right.
I don't know. It's kind of on you as the viewer. If you just checked out on Book of Boba Fett, you still could have followed what happened. It wasn't like it was any secret and
That's
wasn't
true.
everywhere. For that they did those 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that, yeah, I'm sure there were some casual fans that didn't know. They do address it very quickly. In the scene with Grief Karga, that
I thought your
Yeah.
whole quest was to get him a Jedi, and he's back.
right.
So just as an aside, I am not finding this live stream on YouTube. Which
Well,
could be sad for all of our thousands of adoring fans.
that's true. The thousands of people that watch our episode.
Yes.
All right. So, I guess we'll just hang out here for a minute while I make sure that this is actually on the YouTube.
That's always good.
Yeah.
It says it's live. Maybe my app. Oh, there it is. I found it. Okay.
See, I had it right.
You did.
Now I can hear us 3 times.
There we go. I found it. Now I can be part of the chat for all of our thousands of fans. Look, see one viewer. That's me.
That's you. Yeah, we may be dropping in on top of somebody else tonight. I think I saw somebody else was going live. So, it is what it is. We're doing it when we can because people are going to be out of town this weekend. And
running away because if I don't, there will be a riot because cousins have been out of town for 2 weeks and we have not had our requisite cousin time. And by we, I mean my children. And the world will clearly end if we do not get an entire week to play with our cousins.
So look, Nicole is in the chat.
Hey.
See, it says 2 now.
There we go.
We're almost to 1,000.
I know. We're really something.
998 more to go.
Hey, it's just a few.
So, back to The Mandalorian. Now that we're sure the technical issues are worked out
now
here.
That we know that we're here.
So you told me what you thought. I really enjoyed it. I think the thing that stood out to me was I was just really, really happy to feel like I was back in the Star Wars universe. Like, I liked Andor. Okay. Like, I really loved the last 5 episodes. It's everything I want in a science fiction show. But
it was a different kind of Star Wars.
But it doesn't, but that's where I'm going. Like, for me, like, Andor's great science fiction. But it's missing so many of the ingredients that are why I love Star Wars.
Yeah. And I mean, it's clearly some people's cup of tea. Like, it's some people's favorite thing, which just means that there are probably different things about Star Wars that are their favorite.
Yeah. But look, it's a reintroduction. We haven't had this show on the air for 26 months.
Yeah,
That's insane.
that's really long.
You had to come back and reestablish.
Hmm.
Like, I see a lot of comparing it to the Bad Batch, which the Bad Batch season, I'm a few episodes behind, but it's, they're doing a really good job with it. But like, everybody's saying, well, the Bad Batch episode that came out this week was better than the Mandalorian episode. Well, you're comparing a mid-season episode to a season premiere. The season premiere of the Bad Batch kind of sucked.
Yeah, I was real like the first episode of the Bad Batch. I was just like, oh, we're still doing this. I mean,
No,
it was
it took
fine.
until like episode 3 to really
Mhm.
take off.
Yeah.
But since then, I've really been enjoying it. But like 26 months, you've got to come back in and sort of reestablish what's going on with your characters.
Mhm.
And I felt like they did that. They didn't waste time. We went from place to place. We reestablished the story, and we don't have to spend the whole season resetting all these pieces. We did most of it in one episode. And it's, I mean, it is what it is. It's not like it's some incredibly deep Star Wars story. Like,
No.
but it has so much fun stuff, so many nods to Rebels. The Purgle was really fun.
Hmm.
The Anzellans is a really fun addition. The Anzellans are hilarious.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
they were great. The
the
kids were very excited about them, almost as excited as Grogu.
Yeah.
Okay, so I always love the like nods to the fans. Oh, the little guy's here. Grogu. His name is Grogu. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, whatever you say. Yeah,
okay.
no, it's
Yeah.
they're very aware of that. If you listen to Favreau in interviews, like they're all very sort of self-aware about the Grogu thing,
Mhm.
the Grogu Baby Yoda thing.
Yeah.
They know now that they waited too long to tell us his name.
Mhm.
But they went with it. That was back in season 1 where we didn't get a lot of names. We didn't even get Din Djarin's name till the end.
Right.
Um, we were doing the Western thing. Was everybody was kind of known by what they do.
Yeah. And I mean, that being said, still for most people, he's the Mandalorian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like for most people, he's not even. He. If you said Din Djarin to a lot of your average, I think, casual watchers of the Mandalorian, they'd be like, "Who?"
Yeah.
I mean, they only ever reference his name a couple of times.
We've done it increasingly as we've moved through the story, but look, it was good. This show is everything that I love about Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only show that I kind of put up there on that top shelf of Star Wars material. Like I said, Andor's great, but it's missing a lot of the ingredients for me to make it a great, to put it on that top shelf of Star Wars stuff. I like Star Wars stuff, not for dark and gritty. I like it because it's fun and I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And
the good guys are good guys, and the bad guys are bad guys, and the pirates are bad guys, and it's
yeah. So I don't know. I thought the action sequences were really good. They got some really, really cool shots fighting I don't even know what the new monster is called, the big alligator turtle thing that they fought at the beginning.
Very alligator-esque.
Yeah, but it had a shell.
Yeah. Elijah could probably tell you what dinosaur it's most like, but plesiosaur. It's plesiosaurish.
There's in particular one shot that they did. It's an over the shoulder for one of the Mandalorians flying away from the explosion.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many really cool shots. The sequence with Din fighting the pirates in the asteroid field. So many good shots.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be back in this world. And like I said, it's not like I mean, I expect everything I've heard from people that have seen the first 2 episodes is that next season, the next episode, it just really takes off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't even mind that we took a little time to just kind of re-immerse ourselves before we hit the ground running.
It's a little bit of like, all right, here's where we are, here's where everybody is in life,
Yeah.
Kind of just
well, we've had some passage of time.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of works for me, especially as much passage of time we've had in the real world. Things that were like, and we picked up the next day, it's like, really? Because your 12-year-old is 20 now. There were a couple of things that had COVID just threw everything off so bad.
Mhm.
And there's been post COVID, there have still been issues getting production to go like it ought to. There's still been a lot of concerns. Things, COVID protocols are slowing things down.
But you can
making
still
things
have
a
your whole
lot more
you can still
expensive.
have your whole set shut down.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, everybody gets the flu, and they're like, "Oops," but everybody gets, there's a tipping point. I mean, I've been on like 3 shows that have shut down for COVID, and I haven't been on, out of what 10 shows that I've worked, and that's a significant portion of them.
Yeah.
So,
Like I said, though, I'm glad to be back in this world.
mhm.
Um, and I know that everybody was sort of excited about it. I know that some of it, I know John Favreau made some statements about the time passage over the course of the show
Mhm.
that if you go look, there's actually another interview where he talked about it a little later the same day
Mhm.
and he clarified some things that he
Mhm.
said. You could even tell when he was saying it. If you watch Dave sitting next to him while he's saying it, Dave's going, nope, nope. uh, but yeah, I mean, we've had 2 years of passage since the beginning of this show. They
Mhm.
didn't always do a good job of showing the passage of time, but we have things like the N1 Starfighter build.
Mhm.
On the show, it happens in one episode. So you go,
Mhm.
okay, it was a day. Well, it was probably at least
Well, he
weeks.
also spent a whole episode rebuilding the Razor Crest after the Jawas took it apart.
Right. And then the Navarro, the progress we've seen of Navarro
Yeah, that doesn't
clearly,
happen overnight.
no, that clearly took place across time.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I really enjoyed the episode. Like, I don't think it was like the greatest episode of The Mandalorian or anything. I mean, I think that's a pretty steep hill to climb. But
I mean, I think it was a really good. Um,
look, here's the thing, and Roe's gonna hear me from wherever he's at and come after me for saying this. But I had more fun watching this episode of The Mandalorian than I had watching any episode of Andor. That's not to say that this episode is better
yeah,
than anything from Andor, but I enjoyed myself more watching
it's a
this.
completely different experience. There's certain kinds of entertainment that you watch that just isn't as fun.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
that's the thing is like, people, when you rank my Star Wars movies and people go, you really put this ahead of that. And it's like, yes, I'm ranking them in the order that I enjoyed them.
right, not what I think is the best Star Wars movie
Right. It's the
necessarily
reason I
ever.
put A New Hope ahead of Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back is clearly the better made movie,
Mhm.
but I enjoy the first movie better.
Yeah,
Um, which pretty much everybody did when those came out because Empire was a cliffhanger.
right. And I was kind of wondering, that's become a really common formula: is a standalone first movie, cliffhanger sequel, and then a resolution. Not as much now, but for a long time that was a
Oh,
really
that's 100% the Lucas model. Like,
that
if
was
you
a
don't know if you've got an uncertain future,
Mhm.
you can make one movie.
Right. I mean, that was Pirates of the Caribbean. That
Yeah,
was a lot of
you're absolutely making a bid to
Mhm.
make more movies.
Right.
But your first one, you're going to make a movie that's fully self-contained.
But is that sort of where that pattern originated?
I'm sure it's not the like first place that was ever done,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's probably at this point the most notable.
Mm-hmm.
It's well known at this point because there is no move. There really isn't. Well, I don't know if you can say that anymore. I mean, I think Marvel's kind of gotten up on that same pedestal, but
Mm-hmm.
like for a long time, like in pop culture, like there was nothing bigger than Star Wars.
Right.
And I think you could still make a strong argument that there still isn't.
Yeah.
I think in some ways, like I think that Star Wars is floundering right now and not necessarily making all the right moves. Where
Mm-hmm.
over the last 10 years, Marvel has really just
Being consistent.
well and just thrown Lucasfilm in the dirt. Like
Okay.
they
So, well, here's the thing about Marvel is they sort of get to co-opt the popularity of things like Spider-Man.
true.
Because like Spider-Man is the biggest pop culture thing in the world.
Right.
And has been. Yeah, I mean, okay, not the biggest, like right below what Hello Kitty or something, but one of the
Well, it's
biggest.
Spider-Man is the most valuable superhero product, um, intellectual property, and the second is like not close.
So that's the thing about Marvel is they get to kind of co-opt some of the traction that these characters have independent of the movies that they made yesterday. Whereas Star Wars is just its own thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Star Wars has also just not been hitting on all cylinders.
No.
It's
There have been some real disappointments in Star Wars in the past
decade.
decade, yeah. Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think they've done a lot of good things. They've had a lot of misses, but the Mandalorian has been one of those that has been consistently solid. And I mean, what are some things you enjoyed about this episode?
I mean, I always enjoy me some Baby Yoda. He's
Yeah.
he's a fun, he's just he just his dynamic is always interesting with the people around him. Like it kind of brings out a different side to people. A lot of times you'll see a little more character. You get a little more well-rounded characters sometimes if you have them interacting, in a professional capacity, but also interacting with a child. I think it's a
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can I think you have to give them a ton of credit for what they've done with Grogu.
mm-hmm.
And I don't really know what they did. Like it looks almost more believable this season.
Yeah.
And they're getting better and better with it.
Yeah.
But to have a character that you care about, it was the same challenge with Yoda, with the puppet.
Yeah.
When Frank Oz and them did the puppet, it
Mhm.
was, how do you do this and make people believe it?
Yep.
And of course, it's in the acting around. It was Luke Skywalker, it was
Mhm.
Mark Hamill
Mhm.
that made us believe Yoda was real.
Right.
And I think that everybody does a really good job around Grogu with
Word
doing the
is that
same
that
thing.
puppet's amazing.
Oh yeah,
And that helps, for actors to have something that's really convincing.
yeah, for sure.
So I mean, it was just nice to get kind of reacquainted with some of our people. We
Yeah,
got to. I'm a little bit glad that we didn't stop off on all, because I was a little bit afraid it was going to be like
you thought we were going to go to all the
Baby
places.
Yoda and Mandalorian, and they stop on Navarro. Hello, Navarro. They stop on Tatooine. Hello, Tatooine. We get
Well, we're still going to some
IG-11.
of those
Hello,
places.
and we are, but I'm glad that this episode wasn't just like a rehash of all the places we've been.
Yeah.
That scene with Bo-Katan was perfect.
Yeah. And it's simple, it's minimalist, but
yes. But I think we got a really. The thing about Bo-Katan is she's a little bit of a loose cannon. Like you never quite know what you're gonna get.
No, I mean she's very likely to sort of play the role of the Mad Queen here.
Mm-hmm.
She's not forget she wasn't always on the side of good. And when she talks to Den, I've seen a lot of comments about this, about your cult, because she was part of the cult. Like she understands it. Like she's not just casting aspersions from out of nowhere. Like she knows this well, and she knows what route they went in following Darth Maul and all the other things that transpired.
But I thought it was interesting. They really kind of decided to. Had they ever actually confirmed Children of the Watch as the sect previous to this, or is this the first time we've actually officially gotten that name dropped in an episode, as opposed to just sort of speculation?
What do you mean?
Well, we kind of figured that they were an offshoot from Death Watch, but is this the first time we've heard them referred to as the Children of the Watch?
No.
Okay, that's when we met Bo-Katan before. Is that whenever we got the?
We've heard them called that, but I think we've heard them called that I don't know how far back. Bo-Katan has always referred to them as that. Like first time she meets him, she says, "You're a child of the Watch."
Hmm.
But I mean, we know that it was Night Watch or Death Watch that saved him, that saved Dinjarin as a child. Like, I mean, we
Right.
saw that.
But it
So,
sounds like Children of the Watch may actually like they don't identify as Death Watch anymore.
well, that's it's
They
and
identify
she
as the Children of the Watch.
well, that's what she has kind of pointed out that this is whatever name you want to call them. They
Hmm.
keep it keeps evolving who they
To be
are,
weirder,
but
maybe,
this
or
is who they are.
hmm
Um, and so it's going to be interesting to see um, because we've talked about this a lot. You know, it's a fractured culture, and
hmm
it's been fractured by the different sects.
hmm
She's willing to look at them and say it was you that caused the split,
right.
even though it was her sister
Hmm.
that set out to make them a peaceful people and
Right.
and was also at the same time trying to change who her people were.
Change their fundamental cultural identity.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's you've got a lot of different groups that have gone out of their way
hmm
to try to take control of who the Mandalorians are,
right.
which is why Din Djarin's an interesting character as far as the big picture, because maybe he is the right one to unite the
Mhm.
clans because he's an outsider.
You know, I think that's a really um I think that's a really likely direction that they're going to go. And I appreciate the fact from a storytelling point of view that they didn't just automatically say took off your helmet, ooh, forget them, ditch it, like he's still a zealot.
Yeah.
Um and I feel like it was a very intellectually honest decision to have him now trying to atone for that. Um, and he's going to go on this quest to find the mystical waters to cleanse his sin. Um, because that's the thing is this sort of zeal doesn't just turn off. Like people who get out of these kinds of systems, it's a process.
Yeah.
And I think it was really I think it was an intellectually honest decision to have him actually now try and fix it, right? Because he didn't just cease to believe these things. Um, so I think that that's going to be an interesting. I mean, obviously, I don't think that's where he ends up. I don't think he stays here forever, but I
Yeah.
think it's a good. I think it's going to be an arc instead of a just like moment. He's
Yeah.
not just converting away from his fanaticism.
Right. So yeah, it's that's always been the most interesting part here is I've felt like even since season one where they were headed was some sort of restoring of Mandalore.
Hmm.
I think that's the stories that Dave Filoni ultimately wants to tell is a restoring of the Mandalorians and a restoring of the Jedi. Of course, the sequel trilogy does make it a little more challenging to tell the story of the restoring of the Jedi. Um,
Hmm. Well, yeah, it's because now to tell any of that story, you have to,
well, you got to wait. You've got to push it further ahead.
right, or you have to tell, you have to tell this whole story that is going to come crashing down.
Or you do what I suggested and you rebuild them side by side that Ahsoka builds her temple on Mandalore and that they are more isolationist
Hmm.
so that they're just not involved in what goes on later for a
Yeah.
while.
Do you see though Ahsoka being an isolationist kind of person? She can never not meddle. Like even after everything, after Order 66, after Anakin betrays her and everything he ever believed in, as far as she knows, Padme is dead.
Maybe,
She
but the fight that
still,
she was fighting is over by the time the sequel trilogy rolls around.
that's true, but it's the same evil and she knows it. I
Does she? Because nobody knew that Palpatine had
but
returned
she
till the
knows
end.
but she knows it's the same kind of evil. it's the same kind of totalitarian, take the freedom. Like she's never been much one to not not
That's
meddle.
true.
Of
She's also going to
course,
be much older by that point.
that's true. Um, and I guess if Luke can go live on an island by himself for 20 years, then Ahsoka can keep her people.
Yeah, I mean that's even assuming that Ahsoka lives to that point. At some point
Yeah.
we will wrap her story up. So I don't know. Um,
Do you think that we finally wrap her story up some point in the Ahsoka series?
maybe.
Man, I wanted to see the Jedi. I know everybody's tired of hearing me say it, but I wanted to see them at the end of that movie. If we're gonna be all the Jedi, like have them pop up.
Yeah, we don't have time to talk about the Rise of Skywalker there.
No, but that would have been such a nice ending for all those characters. That we heard their voices,
Yeah.
but we wanted to see them. Anyway,
But yeah, I'm glad to see Katie Sackhoff. I think we're going to see a lot of her this
she's
season.
so happy to be there.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot of her this season. I think
Yeah.
she plays a major role this season. I mean, just even based on the way her name is credited at the end of the episode, I'm assuming she's going to be in most of the episodes.
Yeah.
I really like the opening scene. One, it was just a fun action sequence to open up on, but we do get a further look into this Mandalorian culture.
Mm-hmm.
We see a child of the Watch being baptized um, into the clan. Basically,
Which I
they're
absolutely thought was a flashback.
a lot of people did.
Like that's all, definitely what I assumed was going on there.
Yeah, a lot of people were apparently sitting there going, "Man, that's bad casting. If that's supposed to be a young Din Djarin." And of course, it wasn't a flashback, which it didn't really make sense to be a flashback because you had all the you had all the same adult characters there. You had Paz. Was it Paz Vizsla? Is that John Favreau's character? Um,
But and so then I'm going because we haven't seen the armorer's face, we haven't seen Vizsla's face. So how old are they? And it's like, oh, it's correct. Okay, never mind.
the Purgle was a really, really great scene. I like both of the big action sequences. I hope we see a lot more based on the trailer that they showed us back at Star Wars Celebration last year. I don't think we're anywhere near done with space battles. I think we've got a really big one coming.
Yeah, no, I mean, space battles have only gotten better. Like Star Wars space battles, man, the things they can do with technology now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
What did you think about the way they handled the Cara Dune question?
I feel like it needed to be. I feel like they needed to do that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just be like, because she was such a big part. I mean, if you think back to, I mean, it seems like forever ago, but she was like a fixture of the last couple of episodes of this show that we saw. So, yeah, I think that definitely, and that works. Like that tracks.
Yeah.
After she turned him in, okay, like because she was an adrenaline junkie. Like clearly, she was not really as well suited to be a marshal as to be special forces. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that tracks up. And I'm glad that they at least addressed, in universe explanation for why she's not there.
Yeah. I really enjoyed I appreciate the way they did it. I think it would have been too easy to have just killed the character off screen. So I appreciate what they did. It leaves the door just cracked open a little bit in case anything ever changes and they do decide to come back to that character. But they didn't feel like they had to denigrate the character in any way. They were able to give enough of a story of her off on a new adventure. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And that way, you can think of the character fondly and be like, oh, she's doing great. Thanks.
Yeah. So we weren't sure anybody would actually drop into our chat because we did drop in at the same time as Rogue One Radio, which wasn't the plan. This was kind of a spur of the moment thing because Marisha's going out of town for 4 days and or 3 days, and I needed to do this before the weekend. So this was the only chance to do it. So sorry to Rogue One Radio. We didn't mean to drop in on top of you like that. Um, let's see. What did you think about? I can't even gonna think. I'm gonna forget his last name. Our new pirate king, like Gorian Shard or
something.
Yeah.
He reminded me of one of those big lumbering creatures from like the Fraggles.
Okay.
That's what it reminds me of.
That's funny. Well, they weren't plant based, but I get it.
He looks like a Jim Henson creature.
He does. He may have been. At least the I mean, obviously it was a lot digital. I've seen a lot of people compare it to Pizza the Hut from Spaceballs and a number of other things, and it's crazy looking. But I've seen a lot of people upset about it. I'm like when was Star Wars like not a place for crazy, bizarre looking creatures? Like I don't, it doesn't bother me. What did you think about the music? Because we changed composers.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't notice it. So it's been getting increasingly more Star Warsy as it's kind of going on. It started off lots of kind of weird instruments from obscure places, obscure instruments nobody ever heard of, and they have really been kind of leaning more and more into kind of traditional Star Wars music, and this one was definitely more traditional Star Wars music. But I didn't. So who's the new composer?
Joseph Shirley, fellow Mississippian.
Oh wow!
It's from Jackson. He's been on some movies, mostly like he's hasn't worked a whole lot as a composer. I do think that he did Book of Boba Fett. But he is the new composer on this. Like he's blowing up all of a sudden. He's the new composer on this. He's the composer on Creed 3. Wow. So he's kind of blown up all of a sudden, and I enjoyed it. I thought he did a good job with taking Goranson's themes and then putting his own own little spin on it with I think it was a little more synthy maybe, which I think is good. Like I like synth stuff in my, like, synth is fun because it's retro and futuristic at the same time. So I like that. I'm really not sure, Nicole, as far as why they changed. I'm assuming, I mean, Ludwig Göransson is, I mean, he's so big now. Like, I'm assuming that it was just a scheduling. Well, I'm assuming it was a scheduling conflict. It could have been a money thing. I don't know, but I do feel like Joseph Shirley stepped in and did a good job, because I do feel like most people didn't notice that it was a whole lot different.
No, it wasn't jarring, which is what I'm looking for in continuation if you got a different composer.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything on why, but it is. I do think the guy's doing a good job, and like clearly he's the guy that's blowing up right now. So
yeah.
What else?
I can't believe I missed that.
What else would you enjoy?
What else did I enjoy? I know we talked about the little Babu Fricks, but they were so funny.
Yeah.
And Karga over there, like, he said he can't do it. It's like, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great joke with with him translating. Because I mean the The Anzellans are speaking basic, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminds me of when I go a little too far south around here and I start getting the Cajun accents and I almost need somebody to translate them for me. It's like they're speaking English, but I can't understand a word of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So, okay, hear me out. I didn't love it.
Really?
Yeah, because like we made this whole big sacrifice thing.
It's still a droid.
It's still a droid, but it was like and okay, seriously, like how do we believe that he didn't just all melt? Like that's just yeah, I wasn't a fan.
I don't mind it. I'm curious to see like what the intention is, like why he specifically needs a droid for this trip that he's making. It makes sense that if he wants a droid, that's one that he would be willing to go back for. But yeah, he made a like it's kind of I'm kind of torn on it. I feel that, um, but he did make a big sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. And
But
also,
it's
like
like
the
it's
bottom half of him is clearly all melted, but like what happens when the bottom part melts is then the rest of it melts. Like how did they get bits of him back?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
I mean, I guess if they can cut Darth Maul in half and then bring him back years later, I mean, sure.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a body, it's a torso, a head, and an arm, and now I don't even think they have the head.
Yeah, that had. Ugh.
Um, but yeah, it's one of those things. Like initially, I was like, oh, well, does that what does that do as far as his sacrifice? It doesn't negate his sacrifice.
No, but we kind of did the same thing with it's. It feels like this is the same thing that we did with 3PO in Rise of Skywalker, and it was like, oh, I'm sacrificing myself for my friends, and I'm back. It's like, come on, like,
But you don't say that when Gandalf the White comes back.
okay, the one time it's different.
It's not.
It is.
IG-11 is the Gandalf of this.
No, no. IG-11 is not the Gandalf of this franchise.
um, but no, I think it doesn't bother me. I'm excited to see the character come back. Um, and I honestly, because everybody's talking about, oh, so he's just going to go magically find this hard to find part. Like well, most of the parts,
No, he's going to Tatooine to go hit up the Jawas.
well, he could, or he could go kill one of the other IG units, which would be a great battle.
Yeah.
They're formidable.
Mm-hmm.
I love the thing crawling across the floor. Like, I don't know. I'm assuming they basically did some stop motion work and then sped it up.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's creepy.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Like, I feel like that's kind of like a classic like horror thing. Is like half of the torso dragging across the floor.
Yeah.
It's unsettling.
So
But yeah, it was.
Hey, Nick's in the chat.
Hey, Nick.
Ooh, we've got to finish up in the next 10 minutes because we've got to go record Science Fictionary.
It's true.
David will be waiting on us.
Yeah, he's always a little more on it than we are on Thursday night. So he's like, all right, I'm ready when you are. It's like, I'll be there
Yeah.
eventually.
So what else? The pirate ship was very cool.
The pirate ship, yeah, it looks like a some kind of like hammerhead something.
Yeah.
Didn't the separatists have some kind of hammerhead ship?
They did. It could be that. In fact, I think that's what it is. It's also reminiscent of a few ships from some video games.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be curious to see some more information. I'd like to know what that ship is exactly because it's very likely we've seen it before somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems familiar, but I couldn't quite place from where. That was my guess, was that we had seen it somewhere during like the Clone Wars, but yeah, it was it was pretty fun. And the interesting thing is typically when we've seen pirates in Star Wars, especially in Clone Wars, we got your little more like Jack Sparrow kind of
Mike Hondo.
swashbuckling scallywags,
Hey, I'm all for pirates showing up because the more pirates show up, the more likely it is that eventually we could see Hondo.
Yes. But these pirates were actually like straight up not at all sympathetic pirates.
All right.
They
Well,
very
neither were the
piratey.
ones that Hondo hung around.
No, but Hondo was always, just altruistic enough occasionally when he was in just the right kind of mood. That
Yeah.
he always kind of kept you guessing a little bit.
So Nick liked it, and I'm glad to hear that because I would say a 9 out of 10 for me as well. I think that obviously they didn't do just a ton here other than setting the stage for the season, but I can't think of anything that I didn't like in the episode,
Mm-hmm.
and I thoroughly enjoyed myself being back in this world.
Yeah. I think Nicole may be right. If those weren't the pirates that we actually saw in Boba Fett, they were very similar kinds of pirates.
Yeah, they could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Which we saw some of this crew previously. We see Cara Dune take out a bunch of this crew last season.
Okay.
The school that they're trying to go in to drink was their hangout.
My school. So where do you think Grief Karga's going? Like, what direction do you think he he's getting to be a little pleased with himself?
He always has been though.
He has always been, but
I don't think we're going to do anything to change him being a good guy. I think he's going to get a humbling moment. There are some scenes in the trailer that looks like we're going to have a pretty big throwdown in Navarro. So maybe a humbling moment.
Yeah, it could happen.
But I'm trying to think. I think we've pretty much covered everything, but I enjoyed the episode. I can't wait to see where we go next. What did you think about the length of the episode?
I always feel like these episodes are too short.
I agree. At the same time, I think we get kind of a miss. We kind of, I think streaming services have changed the way we look at that stuff because an hour-long TV program on your television it's really only like 40 minutes of content.
That's true.
Which is about what these episodes are. This one was a little under that. But at the same time, I felt like everything was concise to the point. We didn't drag any of the scenes out longer than we needed to. And from there, like, I felt like it was just a good place. I felt like, even though it was short, I felt like it did everything it needed to do to reestablish where we are in the story and like where we're going from here.
Yeah.
So it's hard to complain about it because it's one of those things like it doesn't do anything. I don't feel like, I know to some people it was jumping from scene to scene too quickly, but I'm sort of glad they did that because otherwise we could have dragged this 35 minutes out over 2 episodes. So I'm glad we just jumped through all this stuff, reestablished, and moved on. I do appreciate the religious. There's a lot of religious imagery in this. Filoni is. I know most of that's coming from Filoni just from hearing him talk. As far as kind of laying out the way the religious nature of this works, but he's really, really good at it. Everything from talking about the apostate ideas, that Den is an apostate, even though most Mandalorians wouldn't consider him that. We see a baptism,
like not even like subtle.
No, a
like,
full-on baptism. Like this
up,
is you becoming a new,
like the whole as Baptists, usually we see an image of baptism like actually dipping you under the water, but most church traditions, pouring is the mode of baptism. So like when she gets that bowl, to pour over his head, it's like this is one of the yeah. But like that's one of the most universal images of baptism
Mhm.
is standing in a river with a cup of water.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that was kind of on the nose there. And it's also a really interesting kind of look at different sects, different denominations, different um really opinionated groups within the same belief system, basic belief system.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's an interesting. So you think Bo-Katan is the apostate?
I mean, she would certainly fall in the same category as him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's all, you know, there's a lot of complexity here. And I think what we wind up seeing by the end of this, whether that be, however many seasons from now that ends up being, is um, a meeting of the minds between the different groups.
And I do think though, Nick, I think that Bo-Katan's thing is she's coming to a place where it's really something she doesn't. Not only do I not believe what you believe, she doesn't really seem to believe much of anything anymore. Which as a religious metaphor, um, you're right. She runs the risk of being a false teacher.
Yeah.
Um, within the belief system, and so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the most interesting overall stuff about this episode is
Yes, it definitely is. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see, as she seems like she's come to a place where she really doesn't believe any of it anymore. But how much of it is she going to be willing to use to try and control the people around her? Like you see that as kind of the hallmark of medieval Christianity, um, is these really powerful religious leaders who don't literally one of them is like gambling in the Vatican, invoking Zeus in his gambling endeavors, and but still being willing to invoke Jesus to get people to do what he wants them to do, right? So I think it's going to be interesting to see, as she seems to really be an unbeliever at this point, how much she's still going to be willing to use other people's faith to get what she wants out of them.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we're going with that. So it'll be interesting to see. And I don't know, maybe.
Well, it's a complicated thing because like this is, saying that like she's the apostate, she's on the wrong side. But the thing is the side that Den was raised by are
Right.
clearly the villains in the Mandalorian story so far.
Right.
These are the people that followed Darth Maul.
Right. And that's the other thing. Like, so is she apostate, but is she apostate from a cult?
Right.
So it's complicated.
Mhm.
And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to see is that this kind of fervor is fraught and it's complicated, and it's lots of people get hurt in
Yeah.
all of this. I think we're going to see lots of people really damaged by this fallout.
But it's going to be a matter of whether like the story that I would assume that Filoni's um objective here will be to tell a parallel story to what Luke has told with the Jedi
Mhm.
in regards to dogma. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. But we've got to wrap up because we've actually got to jump over and record a new episode of the Science Fictionary podcast.
We do indeed.
And so we're going to jump out. So Marisha, real quick, where can people find you? Actually, real quick, what would you rate the episode?
Ooh, we would rate the episode 8 out of 10.
Okay. I'll go with an 8.5 out of 10. Just because I love the episode. I don't think it does anything wrong, but I got to leave a little room because the things I'm hearing about future episodes, I've got to leave a little room for my ratings there. Because
I mean, and it didn't do just a whole lot. I think it wasn't a like, wow, that really moved things forward. Just a whole lot.
No, it's all establishing.
Except for I think that the main thing that really moved the story forward is going to be the conversation that he had with Bo-Katan.
We learned a lot more about the Mandalorians in general.
Yeah.
So real quick, where can people find you online?
I don't like online.
I know you don't, but where can people find you if you were online?
If I were online, I would be on Instagram at princesses_and_padawans, and I'm ppadawans on Twitter.
All right. Thank you for joining us in the chat, Nicole, Nicholas, and Megan. And we will be back each and every week to talk about this again. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us and participating in the conversation. You can find me running the Twitter account at crew_podcast, at CRU_podcast. You can find both of our audio podcasts, Coruscant Radio Underground and the Science Fictionary, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And you can drop us a line at thesciencefictionary@gmail.com. And as always, you can find our podcast as well as the rest of the Red 5 Podcast Network at Red 5 Network on Twitter. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.